Hi, my name is Deanne Barr, and I write books of sex, suspense, and satire. If you're looking for your next great read, please pick up Expired Listings, Slashing Mona Lisa, or my new release, Saving Grace, a psychological thriller, which is now available on pre-order. My guest today on Author Groupie is Dwayne Clayden, who has worked as a police officer, a paramedic, and a firefighter, among other things, for the past 40 years. So as you can imagine, the realism that he brings to his novels is astounding. He will discuss his two series as well as a short story that is being expanded into its own book. So please sit back, enjoy, and as always, stay safe. Welcome to another edition of Author Groupie. I'm here with Dwayne Clayden, who has vast experience in emergency services that spans over 40 years. It includes work as a police officer, a paramedic, a tactical paramedic, a firefighter, EMS being emergency medical services, a chief, an educator, and an academic chair. So that's really exhausting to say. He is a popular speaker at conferences and to writing groups, presenting on realistic police, medical, and paramedic procedures, which means I'm going to hit you up to speak for my Sisters in Crime group.
All right, perfect.
Yeah, the co-author of 4 paramedic textbooks, he has spoken internationally at EMS conferences for the past 3 decades. He is a member of the board of directors of the Crime Writers of Canada. And his first novel, Crisis Point, was a finalist for the 2015 Crime Writers of Canada Arthur Ellis Award. Outlaw MC was the second novel in the Brad Coulter series, and the third, Wolfman is Back, was released in 2019. His new series, Speargrass, is available via pre-order now on Kindle. There's a lot more here. I'm skipping right to the questions. He's got a beautiful golden retriever. He lives outside of Calgary, and he likes dabbling in magic. That's pretty much it. I just want to cut to the chase because you have such a great resume. We'd be here all day. Welcome to Author Groupie.
Thank you. This is great.
Tell us about your Brad Coulter series and how this new book, Speargrass Opioid, and that series will differ.
Yeah, okay. Well, so my background is as a police officer and a paramedic, and when you start writing, the idea is you write what you know. So that's what I wrote. So I write crime thrillers, crime procedurals, and it follows the character Brad Coulter through his career. So it starts about 4 years into his career, and he's keen, ready to go to do things, and he's kind of stuck in the police paradigm where things aren't changing as fast enough as he'd like. So these stories are set in the late 70s to the 80s. So at that point in time, there was a real kind of old boys club, the new people coming in, and a bit of a clash. So he thinks we can modernize, we can do things a little bit better. And he gets pushed down a little bit. But he's also a trouble magnet. Stuff just finds him, and he gets in trouble, and he finds the bad guys. And often he takes a bit of a licking and has to lick his wounds afterwards. And so within this story, he finds himself up against some ex-military who are robbing banks and Brinks trucks. So these guys have all the technology, all the training in the world, and essentially he has his .38 revolver and a shotgun. So terribly outgunned. So within the story is the creation of Calgary's tactical unit, or as known as a SWAT unit. And so then the playing field gets leveled a little bit as Brad and his team learn the tactics. And then all of my books end up with a big confrontation at the end. So the big confrontation is the ex-military guys are robbing a bank, and the tactical SWAT team then comes into play. And so there's a big confrontation there. And then the series just follows his career. So the next one, Outlaw, is 2 years later, and there's an outlaw motorcycle gang war in Calgary, and the tactical team's caught in the middle of that one. And then within Outlaw is a really nasty character. His name is Jeter Wolf. And after the novel came out, I received emails from lots of readers saying, Jeter Wolf was horrible. He's despicable. You had the chance to kill him. Why didn't you kill him? So I did the only thing I thought a good writer could do, and I brought him back in book 3, and he's out for revenge. So that covers the first 3 of that series. Fourth one is about a sniper. It comes out in November, 13 Days of Terror. And the 5th one is about a vigilante, and it'll come out in March. But in between, now I've written Speargrass Opioid. And it's actually, I guess, quite a different story. I've set it in Montana near Great Falls. And the premise of the story is the opioid epidemic. And Speargrass is a Indian Reserve First Nation, a fictional Reserve First Nation outside of Great Falls, and they're experiencing the opioid epidemic. And they've just hired a new sheriff who is First Nations, and he's coming into this crisis kind of learning as he goes. In Great Falls is a drug enforcement agent who's also chasing down the opioid epidemic. And without complicating things any more than I have, these two have a childhood backstory, so they know each other. But when they get together initially, they're reminiscing about old times and not really talking about what they're working on. And then eventually they realize we're working on the same thing. And so if we combine our resources, we're going to have better luck with this. And like the Coulter series, it leads to a big confrontation at the end.
So this new series is set in modern times as opposed to Brad Coulter, which is in the 70s. Was it difficult to write Brad Coulter now, and suddenly you don't have the internet and you don't have cell phones and all of that?
No, well, actually, for me, it was easy because I lived that period of time. So I was a cop in the 70s, and so it was just really going back and in some cases telling my story or telling what my day was like, what my life was like. And actually, a couple of times at writers' conferences, I've been introduced as a writer of historical novels, because I guess the line is, if the story is over 40 years old, it's historical. So that's really hurtful when you did live through that time and they're calling you a writer of history. But yeah, it was different. And I mean, we carried dimes in our pockets because we had one radio channel, and sometimes dispatch couldn't give you information over the air. And you needed that information, but they didn't want you tying up the 911 lines. So you drove as fast as you could to a payphone, flopped in a dime, and called in and got your information, and then you tore off because you didn't have cell phones. Or you knew the guy in the 7-Eleven really good, and all you had to do was pull in front, toot the siren twice, and when you got in the door, he already had the phone on the counter for you, and you could call in. So yeah, so those are things that were different. I don't have to worry about forensics either because they were kind of non-existent at that point in time. So in some respects, it made the writing easier.
I see. I was around in the 70s too. The problem is when I try to write back then, I don't remember anything because I'm too old.
well, I think the other thing we have going for us, as long as you're writing fiction, you can kind of write anything, and
I guess
you'll be able to get away with it.
Yeah. I guess that is true. So your background, which is fascinating, goes hand in hand with your genre. How helpful are those real life experiences in setting up the fictional scenarios?
Well, I think it's immensely valuable. I think one thing I can bring to my books is I was there, so it's the realism to it. I completely understand the banter that goes on in the police cruiser. You're with your partner 8 or 10 hours a day. You're with your police or paramedic partner more than you're with your wife or girlfriend or significant other. And that's good and that's bad because you also know all the buttons to push. And when maybe your partner's having a little bit of a bad day, instead of being compassionate, you're more likely to start pushing on those buttons and pushing them a little bit. So I bring that sort of banter into the police cruiser or into the ambulance and how they get along. And then when stuff hits the fan, all of that's forgotten. And now you're backing each other up and you've got each other's back 100%. And within 20 minutes after the event, you're back kind of pushing those buttons again.
So with experience in both medicine and in law, you can watch medical TV shows and police procedurals and tear your hair out because of what might be going on that's incorrect or inaccurate. What do shows not get correct that you wish that they would?
Oh my. Well, I think for the medical shows, I actually do a couple of talks at writing conferences on things TV and movies gets wrong. And so within those for the medical ones, things I really don't like are things that they show that are dangerous. So an example would be a number of times an EpiPen has been used for somebody who's having an anaphylactic reaction. And the EpiPen is really easy to use. You just even have to tap it lightly against the thigh. The needle's going to come out and it's going to give the injection. But to see it on TV, somebody swinging back like this and coming down in the chest 3 or 4 times, or into the leg, or worse, even into the neck. To me, those are just all dangerous things. That the potential for error is so great. But I also know that you can go to the pharmacy and they'll literally hand the EpiPen over to you and expect you to read the directions. So if you didn't, and your only reference is what you saw on TV, that's probably what you're going to do.
Wow. That's interesting. I actually have an EpiPen in my new book, but nobody uses it, so I didn't screw that up.
Okay.
Was it an easy transition from your professional life to move from your professional life to actually writing about it?
I think that the biggest challenge for me is that I had written textbooks. Most of the time I was doing training of some kind. So I was writing training manuals, or I was writing protocols, procedure manuals. And so when I first started writing fiction, one of the comments from one of my first instructors was, you obviously understand what you're talking about, but you're writing this like a procedure novel. So I had to learn to stop being a business writer and being a creative fiction writer. And that was probably the hardest part. The hardest part was not telling you everything I know.
Yeah. How many of your storylines are based on true experiences?
In Crisis Point, the first book, a lot of them are my experiences. There's a chase in there, and a few other things that happened that are my experience. In all 3 of the first novels, they are all based on things that actually happened in Calgary. So I've taken those kernels of a story and made them my own, but in each one of them I can essentially say, on this date in this place in Calgary, this happened, and here was the result. So that's kind of neat, being able to tell people kind of the story behind the story. So the creation of the tactical unit in itself in Calgary has a fascinating and somewhat horrific reason why they were created.
Well, you have many more novels in these 2 series that you're planning, or any other new series that are on the horizon?
Yeah, well, I have, so as I mentioned, 2 more for Brad Coulter, 4 and 5. Speargrass so far is getting great reviews, so I'm excited about that. So I do have a part outlined for the next book in the series. So it'll be Speargrass Casino, and it will be about money laundering, and it'll still have the same thing. So it'll be the laundering of drug money through a casino is the premise for that one. And in 2015, I wrote a short story for an anthology. It was supposed to be a very noirish story, and it was going to be an anthology of Alberta writers, and we were all going to write noir. Well, mine turned out to be a little more slapstick, a little more sarcastic. It was kind of like Humphrey Bogart with a sense of humor as the private investigator. And I wrote the story, and people liked it, and I really didn't think anything of it for a couple of years. And for my newsletter, I wanted to give something to the people who had signed up for my newsletter. I thought, well, the story's just sitting there. I should use it. So I sent it to a friend of mine who's a great editor, and he emailed me back, and he says, "Oh my gosh, where have you been hiding this? This is you. This is your work. This is your story. This is what you should be writing." So after Speargrass was done, and then I had the next 2 Coulters. Right now, I'm writing this story. It's about Bryce Pedley, who's a PI in modern times, who essentially thinks he's Humphrey Bogart from the 40s, and he acts that way, and he drives an old car, and he wears a fedora, and he has an old 38 and a shoulder holster, and he uses 40s slang, but it's all in modern time, and he gets underestimated by people. He's stinking brilliant. He's just a little quirky.
How fun that sounds. It's fun. It's really a lot of fun to write humor, I feel, or
Oh yeah.
let loose. I try to do that too, to mixed reviews. I know you said you speak a lot at writers' conferences. What do you find you enjoy most about sharing that wisdom and experience?
I think probably it's just helping the writers write realistic scenes. So you mentioned TV, and so I mean I'm fortunate to have the background I have, so I understand this stuff, and I want to share it. So I want people to be able to write the accurate scenes, not the ones that somebody's going to read and go, oh, that's not the way it happens. For police, probably the biggest example on TV is the police are doing a raid and they all pour in the front door and the bad guy jumps out the back window and escapes down the alley. It's like the police don't realize there's two sides to a building. And in fact, being the guy out back is sometimes the best job because the bad guy's going to run right literally into your arms out back and you make the arrest. So just an example, and I talked about that at a conference, and I had a guy come up afterwards and say, I got to go home and change part of my book. And he changed it, and then last year that book was a New York Times bestseller. Now, not because I made a whole lot of difference in it, but I was kind of proud that, yeah, he took my advice and made his book just a little more realistic.
Yeah, you did make a difference, so that's wonderful. Yeah. So lots of outside interest. You've got this golden retriever, you like yard work, basketball, teaching yourself piano again, doing magic at your niece's wedding. Do any of these sidelines make their way into your books?
Well, actually, the magic one is with the new character, the PI, Bryce. So that's going to be when he doesn't have any cases, he does kids' birthday parties. He does magic at kids' birthday parties.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so I just threw that in for him. And so his backstory is that's what he did through into high school. He did kids' birthday parties to make money where other people were working at Walmart or McDonald's or wherever, and that was his thing. Very cool. So now when he gets stuck for money, he does a kid's birthday party.
Now, will those be cozies, this new character, or more police procedural, or what do you think? Humor?
Well, they're going to be on the thriller side. I mean, there's going to be danger in it. I guess maybe thriller is kind of wrong because they're not exactly going to be not going to be fast paced, but they're definitely intense, and they're going to start out with a seemingly minor incident that is going to grow. And so in this first book, he's asked to recover some rare copies of books. And that's going to lead into the Second World War and the theft of art by the Nazis. And so it's going to start out small and explode big. And he's going to find himself in the middle of a big conspiracy, I guess.
Sounds great. So backtracking to your new book, would you like to read a little from A Speargrass Opioid?
I absolutely would.
Wonderful.
So I'll just read a little bit of the first chapter. And this is introducing the sheriff. His name is Franklin Eaglechild. And so he is making a career decision at this point. Franklin Eaglechild slumped on the examination table, legs over the edge, and stared at the row of x-rays. Reminds me how many previous fractures, the doctor asked? About 50. All from rodeo? No, some from hockey. The doctor sighed. The body wasn't meant to take this abuse. I'm amazed you're still walking. About that, the pain pills aren't doing a lot. I need something stronger. The doctor turned inside. Look, Franklin, OxyContin is all I can prescribe. I shouldn't even be doing that anymore. What's the option? You got to stop rodeo. Your next argument with a 2,000-pound bull could be your last. Any subsequent fractures might not heal. Besides, you can hardly move. How would you dodge a bull? I don't ride bulls anymore, Franklin smirked. I just do steer wrestling. Oh, great. So you jump off a speeding horse to wrestle 500 pounds of steer to the ground. The doctor shook his head again. What could possibly go wrong with that? Come on, Doc. It's all I know. Well, you sell yourself short. A month ago, you said you were applying for a job. What happened with that? It's back on the res. The doctor leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. What's wrong with that? Franklin shrugged. I haven't been on the res for 25 years. But it's home. You got folks there? Nobody close. My parents died a long time ago. Grandparents too. I don't know if I'd recognize anyone. The doctor pushed off the wall and stepped over to Franklin. As I told you a month ago, rodeo is in your past. If you jump off another horse, it could cripple you for life. So no options? The doctor rolled his eyes. What about the job? Well, Speargrass Tribe advertised for an arena manager, Franklin grinned, but they offered me the job of sheriff. Are you kidding me? Nope. You got any police experience? Some, Franklin said. I worked the Montana Highway Patrol, primarily in the winter months after rodeo. Well, that's better than doing rodeo and being crippled. I didn't think I'd get the job, Franklin said. Then he held out his shaking right hand. Will I be able to hold a gun? You'll be able to hold it, but I can't guarantee you'll be able to pull the trigger too many times, and you might not be very accurate. About the pain, Doc. I'll give you a 2-month prescription for Oxy, but you've got to stop rodeo and take care of your body. Maybe try yoga. Are you insane? Hey, pro athletes swear by it. Try it. The doctor grinned. Lots of women go to yoga. Franklin's head jerked up. Lots of women? The doctor said, lots.
Wow.
So that's Franklin's first scene.
I love both the humor and the sarcasm, so I think it would be my kind of book.
I can't hear you again.
Oh, no. Well, that's okay. I'm going to say thank you. I wish everybody out there could go out and purchase these books. They sound wonderful. I want to thank you, Dwayne, for joining me today. And if you could hear me, I'm sure you would say it's been a pleasure. So thank you. And as always, stay safe.
Over the river to the city far from home. Toll booth takes my money.